So there's been the addition of domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking to the statistics that institutions have to report for the purposes of Clery. And I would say in that end, one of the questions that we've been receiving quite a bit is how do we know what definition to use or what we should be using to count? And so the one thing that we really have been encouraging institutions to look to is the definitions within the Violence Against Women Act. We'll get questions such as, well, what if in my jurisdiction we don't have dating violence? Or what if the definition in my area is a little bit different than what's within the Violence Against Women Act? So it's just a good reminder that when you're counting it for the purposes of Clery, you want to make sure that the incident that's reported to you really reflects the definition within VAWA.
Written notification is a great practice even prior to the law. Now we have it in the regulations. It's great from a risk management perspective because it's documentation that you're providing students who are reporting or disclosing with their rights, with their options that they have, and you're providing that either in email or printout form because the regulations didn't give specific clarity as to which way you get that documentation out. It's also a trauma-informed practice because many of the students who are coming to you and reporting have experienced a trauma of some level. And so if you're going over those options verbally, which you should be doing anyway, it's a great follow-up to that because it provides the students with what services are available both on and off campus. So it also gives you the opportunity to audit your services. Look what's available on campus, look what's available off campus, see where you may have gaps, and fill those in.
And one of the areas where the department had some comments is just to reinforce that when they're talking about written notification of rights and options, that's not the same as just handing the person the annual security report. So your ASR has a lot of different information about your policies and your procedures and certainly has that information in there. But when a report comes forward, when somebody does disclose this, you want to make sure that they have something concrete that they can take away that really outlines clearly in a way that they can understand and navigate what those rights and options are.
And a good way to practice for this step is to, when you have that document, that one pager, so to speak, that has all of those options clearly laid out for a student, is to practice it among your professional staff. Practice receiving a disclosure, explaining those options verbally, and then handing them that paper so they have it to follow up or sending them that email after the fact.
And maybe even having a student or faculty or staff take a look at the document and just see, is the language clear? Is it obvious which resources are confidential, which are not confidential? Sometimes when we're working with it so closely, it's easy to kind of get lost in some of the legal language and forget that there's a survivor coming forward and this is a really good way to help support them.
So a couple of things that I would start with around the advisor of choice is determine what role that advisor plays. So it is opening up to the choice of the students, who the accuser and the accused, who they want to have in those hearings. The institution can limit the participation of that advisor, so you need to determine what that's going to look like and that it's equal for both parties. So if you're going to limit participation, then you just want to make sure that you're doing that for both parties and that you're consistent in your processes for how you will respond to that. You also want to talk about what's going to happen if somebody violates that, if that's a process that you have. So there are a number of things you want to think through in the disciplinary procedure. Coupled with that, you also have the training requirements now. So training your panel, or training folks who are hearing these cases, not to be victim advocates, it's not their role, but training them to understand the dynamics of the cases that they're hearing, so that they're really well informed to make decisions on the cases and for the outcomes.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'd add to that is that the advisor of choice really does have to be anyone. So that for some institutions that may have prohibited attorneys as a part of that process, that's certainly going to change their own policies and procedures in relation to that. You also can designate a pool of individuals as long as you don't limit to that pool. So you might recognize that there are certain individuals within your campus community that are really good resources that people may want to tap into. So it's not limiting that practice. You just can't you can't only limit who the person may choose as the advisor of choice to that number of individuals.
And there's value in identifying a pool because you have the opportunity to train that pool as well. So that pool, the folks in that pool may be selected either by the accused or the accuser through multiple processes. So if they understand your process and can explain it, it also may give students, if you have a wide or a diverse group of people, it may give students the option to use someone internally if that's what they would like to do.
I think what I'm most excited about is that it really does call for primary prevention. So it's not just response after the fact, it's not just risk reduction, but it's really looking at what are the attitudes and behaviors that are allowing this to persist within our campus community. But a lot of the questions that we were getting were really tied to how people document this information, or what does it have to look like on our campus. And so one of the things that I really took from some of the comments from the department is that it's not prescriptive. There are certainly requirements that you have to meet that are outlined in there, but it's going to look different for every campus. Some may choose to use an online tool, others will use in person. We would always argue that a combination of strategies is really what's most effective. So the institution has to make sure that that training is available. They don't have to implement a mandatory program. That was another thing that we were hearing quite a bit. How are we going to make sure that every single person comes and accesses or chooses to access this particular program? The requirement is that you make it available to students and employees. And so we've been really excited about conversations that we've been having over the past year from institutions who are really saying, we want to do this and we want to do this well. And what are some of the resources that we can tap into? During National Campus Safety Awareness Month, we had a number of different webinars. Some were related to primary prevention and prevention at institutions. And so I think there are a lot of even free resources that are available that institutions can really utilize in order to meet this additional requirement.
And to piggyback that about the requirement, again, we are excited that it's not mandatory attendance. I think there was this perception, and still sometimes is this perception, that it's mandatory attendance and you have to document that students attend. It's just mandatory that you offer the programs, which quite honestly was a requirement after the 1992 Campus Sexual Assault Victims Bill of Rights. You had to be doing these programs anyway. The difference here is the department is saying, and it came up in negotiated rulemaking, we want you to do programs that are working. We just don't want to see programs to check off a box. So even if you were doing programs that you thought were effective, your job now is to just evaluate those. You have to put some sort of method in place. And the department understood that not all institutions are the same. And not all institutions have departments and can employ evidence-based practices, which quite honestly, there aren't too many around higher education. But it's an opportunity for institutions to do their practices. They just have to evaluate and have measures to make sure those practices are reaching students and that they're working. I'm most excited because I think it gives us a chance to make higher education a leader in prevention. These requirements give institutions chances to shine and look at their populations and look at how they want to change behavior and really be strategic about planning that process.
And really look at partnerships. We're seeing so many partner with outside organizations, local and state rape crisis centers, domestic violence centers. And so there's so many opportunities to really find what is working at other institutions, what's best for your campus, and really find some inventive solutions to that. Well, I would say probably the starting point is just as we had a VAWA amendments to Clery checklist during the that related to the statutory requirements, we've updated that checklist to represent the final regulations, and that's available on our website. In addition to that, we have a number of different programs. Our curriculum has been updated to reflect the final regulations, and we're really also taking a closer look at some of the feedback that institutions have been giving to us as to how we can make it engaging, how we can really make it so that they're able to easily apply it to their own school or to their own campus. And then we have ongoing programs that continue to, or we hope and we've seen, can really help institutions meet some of the specific needs that they have. So National Campus Safety Awareness Month, our collaborative program, which has been really incredible in working with teams at colleges and universities who are really taking this on and saying, we want to be able to do this well. We know that it's going to help support students, faculty, and staff on our campus. And so they've really dived into working collaboratively to address their own Clery needs. So we have a number of different resources that are available through the center. Our goal is really to make this information available as widely as possible and to provide support as people are really applying it to their own campus.